everyone. We are so thankful that you could all join us. Thank you for all the students who have logged on with us today. For our teachers and educational professionals, I can't imagine how crazy your new realities must be right now with having to shift to distance learning. So I just want to thank you again for being here with us. We appreciate you, so thank you for your time. To briefly introduce myself, my name is Cheryl Dela Cruz, and I am the Career Program Specialist with the Career Development Center, a program of the Adult and Continuing Education Division at LaGuardia Community College. Our office has worked towards hosting bi-monthly panels, each time highlighting a different major or certification program at LaGuardia. So just to give the panelists an idea of the population of students who will or may be watching this panel, we host events primarily for our adult and continuing education students who often are not sure what path they want to take, what they want to study once they complete their pre-college academic programming, whether that be the high school equivalency programs, the ESL programs, or other training or certification programs. While completing some data, we noticed that not many of our A students actually enter the education track, which is another reason why we chose to highlight it this time around. And given everything that's happening, we want to answer some questions that students may have or any doubts that they may have. We want them to know that there is a need for educators, specialty education sector, minority educators. There's such a need for it, and we want to make sure that we highlight this field. And co-moderating with me will be Carolyn Nobles, our director. So for the students who are logged on, welcome. If you guys have any questions while the presentation is going on, feel free to either send me a chat with your question, or towards the end when we open it up for questioning, you can just chime in and ask any questions that you may have, okay? I'll start out by asking if everyone can introduce themselves today. So let everyone know who's on the panel and what your title is, what do you currently do? And of course, our icebreaker question is, before you started teaching or working in this profession, what were your thoughts before you started?
Harrison. I am a guidance counselor at Westbury High School, which is located on Long Island. I also help run an after-school program, and I am a track coach all within the same school. Before I got into education, I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't grow up thinking that I wanted to be in education. You know, all through my childhood years, high school, I was one of those kids that didn't really have any goals or aspirations. Um, I went to college on an athletic scholarship, so that's one of the main reasons why I even went to college. And even there, I still kind of didn't know what I wanted to be. So when I was doing some volunteer service with my team, that's when I realized we were doing at a local high school. That's when I realized that I enjoyed working with students and talking with them and building relationships. But even then, I knew I didn't really want to be a teacher. I didn't have a subject that I wanted to teach. I didn't want to be standing in front of a classroom. That's just not me. And so when I looked up what I can do with my degree, which was in sociology, I saw that I could become a guidance counselor. And that's when I realized, I think that I can make that work. So I went to grad school at Long Island University in Brooklyn. Um, I did my internships. You have to do two internships at different high schools, and I had to do one at a hospital and a mental health facility. And when I was done, I got work in nonprofit organizations. I did nonprofit in the Bronx for about 5 years with two different organizations. And then I applied to the school I'm at now, and I've been at this school for 4 years. So all in all, I've been in education for about 9 years now. And like I said, I didn't know what to expect, but I'm glad that I went into this field. I 100% believe that I'm in the right field now, and guidance counseling was really my calling. And, you know, without that volunteer experience and without me realizing that, I would have had no idea that this is what I wanted to do.
My name is Giovanni Ildefonso. I am assistant professor in the education program at LaGuardia Community College. I've been teaching at the college since 2012, and I teach mostly foundations of education, which is really the entry level course introduction for students majoring in our program. Um, and I've always been interested in education. In my academic background, I mixed education with philosophy because I had a strong um, interest in the humanities and mostly in philosophy. So I did my bachelor's degree is in philosophy, and my master's and my doctorate I completed in philosophy and education at Columbia University.
Thank you. Ms. Julia?
So currently now I'm a partner teacher at P226M. It's a District 75 school that was located in Manhattan. And I'm in an 8-1-1 classroom. So all of my students have autism spectrum disorder, and other disabilities. And I am in the New York City Teaching Collaborative. So it's an alternate teaching certification program. And I always found myself in educational settings, whether it be as after school program coordinator. I just always, that was my path. I just didn't admit to it until now. And so I'm currently a Hunter working on my Master's of Science in Education, in Special Education.
Good afternoon. I'm Dixon Polanco. I'm currently a teacher at a South Bronx Middle School. Before deciding to become a teacher, I was definitely involved in different nonprofits that correlated to education. So from mentoring, social emotional curriculum, and most importantly, family engagement, led me the steps that I wanted, not even see, like someone else mentioned, that the goal was to become a teacher and be able to be that male role model. So that's why I decided to push forward in an education and became a teacher.
Hey everyone, I'm Robin. I'm currently an elementary school assistant principal, the K through 5 charter school in Brooklyn, in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, New York. I've spent most of my career in education in the charter sector, although I did have some short experience in the traditional public school system and the Department of Education. If I was to say, what was I doing? I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. Maybe that's because my mom was an educator. She was a preschool educator. She owned her own preschool. So it kind of was, I guess, in my blood. I think what kind of sealed the deal was when I went to Adelphi University and I intentionally enrolled in a 5-year program for education that allowed me to receive my bachelor's in a different area, my master's actually in education. It was almost like being a dual major. But I appreciate that experience because I had the opportunity to develop a love of history. So my bachelor's degree is actually in history. And I wonder that, you know, once I'm done working in schools, either as a school leader or a consultant or something, if I might go back to school and get my doctorate in history, I'm really appreciative of that diversified experience because it allowed me to have a kind of like a sub passion or a sub area of interest while knowing that I wanted to teach small children.
Hello, everybody. My name is Chanel Brown. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I am a 4th grade special education teacher. I'm currently working in an integrated co-teaching classroom. You might hear it as ICT. And this is my 4th year with the DOE. Prior to becoming a teacher, I actually went to Adelphi as well. I started in 2004, and I originally intended to join the 5-year education program. But then my family they kind of dissuaded me out of education at first. And they said, you know, why don't you do something more practical, like, you know, get a business degree. So I did that. I got a business degree. And then I decided, you know, it wasn't for me. I really had like my heart in education. So I went back to Adelphi to get my master's. And then I became a teacher.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Khadijah Thompson. I am also a special educator in a 4th grade classroom. This is my 8th year actually being a teacher, and next year I'm stepping out of the classroom and into instructional leadership. Before I became a teacher, I've always wanted to be a teacher. I started my journey at a college upstate, and the experience was not so lovely, so I decided to switch and go to SUNY Albany. When I got to SUNY Albany, they didn't have any education majors, so I decided to major in sociology, and I ended up getting my master's in education and special education and literacy. So I found my way back Even though I faced so many different things, I always knew I was coming back to education.
Thank you so much, Khadija. I feel like you guys all touched on a lot of points where we have students who maybe are unsure and their parents are telling them to go one way, and then ultimately they decide some way or another, things always bring them back to that passion that they had in the beginning. And sometimes students are afraid to kind of break away and do what they want because they think that, you know, this is what I have to do, or just going from one school and having to go to the next. So I think that the journeys that you guys shared are really important for our students to hear. They are very unique, and a lot of us may struggle with it. Carolyn?
So one of the questions that we wanted to pose to the panel is, what qualities do students look for in a good teacher? And I know we have a few administrators on the panel and just teachers. So I want to know, what are some good qualities that students look for, or what are qualities, that students look for in a teacher?
I think if you would ask me what would I look for in good teachers, it would be the exact same answer. And so when I look for good teachers, I always say I have 3 criteria. Are you smart? Do you love children? And do you want to work hard? And when I say, are you smart, I'm not saying like, show me a transcript, but are you a flexible thinker that really cares about the people in front of you and uses the information that you receive to make really strategic decisions when you're teaching, when you're with children? And so I would say, like, if I would think about what do my elementary school students want from a teacher, a really good teacher, they do want someone that's a flexible thinker. They want someone that really sincerely loves them from the bottom of their heart, and someone that's willing to work hard and also hold them accountable to working hard as well. So I think it's really interesting. I would answer it the same way.
I have to agree with Robin in terms of the relationship aspect of working with children. Children want to have somebody that they can rely on. Children want to have somebody that that they can relate to and that they can, you know, talk to and share anything with. They also want someone who's going to push them, not someone who's going to think that they really can't do the work that is being assigned, or they can't, you know, live up to expectations. So they really are looking for someone who's going to hold them accountable, someone who cares about them, and then someone who also pushes them to do better.
I would share that the role itself is not just being a teacher. You're their first counselor, you're their first parent, you're their first brother, sister, pretty much the role model that's representing of what it's going to be looking like when you leave the classroom. We are their second home, so you have to be flexible to understand that there are different personalities in the classroom, and learning how to adjust those personalities to be able to build a better outcome. So it's really understanding the value of each child and be able to understand that they all are sharing the same thoughts. They just don't know how to express themselves, and we teach them how to express themselves thoroughly and be able to move forward and understand that as they get older, they need to understand what resources look like and be able to push the outcome of having a better education.
I also agree with what everyone else is saying, and especially experiencing working in a D75 classroom. I have some students who are nonverbal, who can't communicate with their words. So just being consistent with them, they're having routines, coming in every day and not forgetting them, because sometimes if they're not able to speak with you, you may sometimes continue to move on, but just acknowledging that they're there and continuing to work with them and just giving that extra support and helping hand, because the kids notice that, and building that relationship with them is very important, and they will show you, they'll tell you what they need as well.
DJ, I see you shaking. You're agreeing.
Yeah, I definitely agree that students, they crave relationships, and like genuine relationships. They can smell when people are being disingenuous, and they'll call you out on it. Like, they know what they want and they will tell you about it. So I definitely agree with everything everyone said.
So I wanted to also extend that question to Drew, because I know as an advisor, you know, you're not necessarily in the classroom with the teachers, but I want to know, you know, what traits do you find that, you know, that you possess that the students continue to gravitate to you as an advisor?
All right. So yeah, my role, it's a little different. So my connections are a little bit more one-on-one with the students as a school counselor. And since I'm at the high school level, most of the students, their problems come from trying to figure out what's going to happen next, because many of them, you know, our students, a lot of them don't have positive role models in their lives. They don't have people that have went to college in their lives, things like that. So they really come to you as kind of like, I need you to guide my life for real. I'm not playing. I need you to really guide my life. So it's a very genuine connection that I have with my students. If you ask my coworkers, my office is the popular one. So, is really just building a very genuine connection, like Khadijah said. And I know when students come to me about teachers, the number one complaint that I get is that, they feel like teachers don't have their back. And so again, relationships, being genuine is, as an educator, if you're not genuine and you don't show them that you actually do care, they're not going to trust you. They're not going to talk to you. They're not going to open up to you. And they really don't want anything to do with you.
And Professor Giovanni, I just wanted to extend this question to you because you're dealing with more adult students, right?
Yeah.
So what is your take on this particular question?
Well, actually, when I meet my students who are beginning their track to become teachers, at the beginning of the semester, I ask them, why are you here? Why do you want to be a teacher? And almost everybody has a story about a teacher who helped them, who understood them, who somehow was very important in a specific moment in their lives. And they want to pay it forward. They want to be a person who will do something else for students. So I really do want to highlight that relationship aspect. Students really do need somebody who will understand them and who will help them articulate a lot of the thoughts and feelings that they have that they don't quite know how to express. And also, it was mentioned before, and I also want to highlight, the students are coming from what they know, and what they know is their families, their immediate communities, but the teacher becomes a representative of the world outside of what they already know. And they also need to know from that person what is beyond their neighborhoods and what is beyond their families and what is it in their immediate realities. And another very important that Robin mentioned before was that flexibility, how smart this teacher is, because I always tell my students, you always need to come in with a plan. You always need a plan when you come for a day, but you don't know if students are ready to follow on your plan. And you have to follow the lead of the students if you really want your lesson to be successful, if you really want to strengthen that relationship. So you have to be able to shift gears. You have to be able to read your students, the parents, when you meet them. How open are you to be a lot of things at the same time? So yeah.
So one of the pieces about, the thing about building the relationships and being there for the student and being flexible and all of these things that you all mentioned, there is an important piece also about that relationship, how that relationship comes into play when discipline is involved. How do you approach discipline and what roles does it play in learning?
Hi. So, like throughout my program, because we're only a 6-month program, they have to get everything in within a short time span, because by September, we are supposed to be being successful to manage our own classrooms. And a lot of the things that they talk to us about is being able to handle classroom management. And what it is basically, old school, the teacher, if you're doing something wrong, they call you out on it right there in front of everyone else, but then not considering your feelings or how they make you feel. And so one of the things that they showed us how to do was to actually continue with teaching while acknowledging the behavior of that student. It may be through eye contact or just tapping a desk or something where we're still letting them know that, hey, they need to focus, but we're not taking our attention away from the whole class. So it's just tools and things like that until I started learning that a lot of the things that I saw when I was younger were inappropriate for teachers to be doing.
And so it's like acknowledging it, being subtle, but not trying to call them out, but I see you.
Exactly. That direct eye contact, like, I see what you're doing. And students really, I noticed it even in just doing it myself, if you just give them that look, like that mama look, they will turn around and refocus on you.
I've been in the charter sector my entire career, but I recently switched to a different charter in Harlem. And my first charter, it was all about, like, in education, when it comes to any form of behavior management, it's all about consistency. Like, are you being consistent in all your rewards and consequences? And so for me, it was like, okay, you do something wrong, it's a consequence. You do something right, it's a reward. And so when I switched to this, my latest charter, I learned about restorative education and restorative practices. And when I learned about restorative practices, it blew my mind. At first, I was like, no, I can't do this. Like, I'm used to being like consequence, consequence.
Mm-hmm.
But that really took away from relationships with students, because if they feel like every time I do something, you're just going to keep giving me a consequence, like, I'm going to eventually shut down. So I learned how to do restorative practices, which involve talking to students, giving them consequences that make sense for what they did. So it's like, okay, you ripped down the bulletin board. Okay, what's happening? How are you feeling? What made you do that? All right, let's spend your lunch period putting back up the bulletin board, and you could talk me through what's going on at home. And so when I learned about these restorative practices, it really changed me as a teacher, because I felt like now I got like a deeper insight to like what makes students act the way they do. Like, why did you do that?
Right.
And before, I never asked that question, and it seems very simple, like to just ask a student, like, wait, why'd you do it? But we were just like consequencing kids, because you have to show them who's in charge, not considering all the things and all the factors that they have going on outside of the classroom and outside of like the school building.
I think Khadijah brings up a good point in reference to school culture. And I think that that's something that's so important to think about when you are a teacher or wanting to enter the field, to make sure you're choosing a school that has a culture that is aligned with your own personal beliefs as a person and as an educator. Because you'll find that schools who have a positive school culture actually have minimal instances of discipline or corrections or negative consequences that have to be given. And that happens because the leaders have not or may not have just set aside time to intentionally think about, like, what do we believe as a school? What do we believe as people? Because our beliefs drive how we treat people and what rules and policies we put in place. And so what you'll find is that even some schools who think that they have a really strong culture, they sometimes struggle with restorative practices, because they realize that, oh, wow, the school culture wasn't where we wanted it to be from the beginning. So when you are a teacher really entering the field, it's really important to go to schools and visit them and ask for a tour, or maybe just pop in one day, not as a teacher candidate, maybe as like a prospective parent, just so you can see how the school functions, because you'll get a lot of information about what that school believes about children and about teachers just by what you see. And so I think that school culture is really important when you think about discipline.
I'm also in charge of discipline in our school, and we choose to not use the word discipline just for the fact that it has a negative connotation to it. So we have been using a lot of different aspects of my findings with social emotional curriculum. The way you speak to a child definitely changes the dynamic. So what we tend to do at my school community is advise them what goals are, how to achieve a goal. If we don't believe in consequences, we just tell them you have not achieved your goal yet. So the vocabulary always changes when we speak to our children, and they see, oh, wait, Mr. Polanco, I didn't meet my goal yet. And then that's when the conversation comes in with the whys and the hows and the whats, because that's the dynamic, because they want to achieve that gap. They want to make sure that they're aware and you're aware that they're actually tracking what they're doing wrong. So that conversation tends to be a little hard for a child to understand how to express themselves. But when you provide guidelines or a chart that states exactly what is needed in the classroom, they will follow those steps. And once they see that they didn't meet that goal, all you advise the child is, you have not met the goal yet, but you can still try. So the focus of trying and pushing does come in our vocabulary, but it's the way that it's being mentioned. So a lot of these curriculums have changed in our teachers' classroom, especially in charge of school culture, which I play a role in, to make sure that each child, even in your do now question, relates to a social emotional question, or it relates to a guideline for your essay, that in order for them to understand, like, there is support, there is a communication and there is lines of questioning that will teach the child how to respond to a teacher or even through an email. So we teach those type of things even through an email, even a one-to-one meeting with the teacher, and be able to build that culture as they keep going to understand what resources look like through a social emotional curriculum.
I just wanted to say that it's really important when you mentioned the socio-emotional part, because when all of my students have to do field work hours, they have to step into a public school and do observations. And then they bring those examples to class and we talk a little bit more about education. And usually their main worry is classroom management. And it gets them a little bit concerned about how would they handle things. And that's when we actually begin talking about the way you speak to children and also understand that they are not just there to learn something. You're just not talking to brains and trying to grow them. They are a full package. They have thoughts, they have emotions, and they don't leave those and just come here to learn. That doesn't happen. So how do you address everything? And whenever something is going on, we have to start thinking that there might be a frustration or something that they don't understand and cannot manage very well. And you cannot just jump in and say that's wrong, you're a bad kid, or you're the trouble kid in the classroom, because that also helps them cultivate a negative self-esteem and think that they are not good students, that they should not be in school. And if on top of that, you go down the route of traditional punishment and discipline and you get them expelled or suspended, then they're going to think that education is not for them. They're not going to think that anybody believes in them. So it's important to just talk about those restorative practices and address the person inside and know that there's something underlying. And once you have that conversation and dialogue started, then things can actually change. And that goal, addressing goals and what is it that you want to achieve and how best to help them achieve them is really important.
So much. The next question that I want to ask, I really want you guys to talk about the adjustment that you've made social teaching while social distancing. And then the second part of the question is, what are your thoughts on Governor Cuomo exploring the option of distance learning as a way of the future?
I think the social part of the distant learning is really affecting a lot of our students because of that one-on-one interaction that they're missing. One thing I do appreciate is actually helping them expand their minds how to be dealing with difficult situations and the involvement of our parents. We have a tendency throughout all schools that some parents may not be involved in their child's education or not see the value of the work that the teacher is doing, because the main responsibility is that they drop off their kids in front of the school doors and we are in charge. We are their second parent. However, they do not know what a daily schedule looks like and how structure is looking like in a classroom. So now they're seeing it and they're struggling in a way, which kind of funny in a way, because now they understand the frustration that we tend to have when it comes to our patients. So now they understand what patient looks like and how to give that individualized attention to each child. So it has played a major role in communication, the way that they're learning, the way that they're submitting work, because everything that they're seeing right now, especially in the middle school area, is a college level course. How an online course will look like, how a conversation happens online with the teacher. So I do appreciate that it's giving them those steps to learn how to do that sooner than later. So there's like a positive and a negative aspect of this whole conversation with it. The positive is teaching them how to be more tech savvy, how to understand what online learning looks like, and how to navigate and be able to submit work on an online platform. The negative piece of it is the social interaction, the technical issues that they're having as well, because we have to continue requesting more devices for our children. And I think the other negative piece is not even the teachers having that conversation, that group setting conversation to discuss curriculum, to discuss what individual program you're providing for each individual child. It completely changes the dynamic even though we do have a Zoom conference, a Google Meet platform to have this conversation, but that main social interaction, that bonding interaction, that support that we give one another is missing in the actual reality.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Dixon just said. The adjustment has been interesting, going from, you know, being in a classroom every day to then being on a computer every day and interacting with the students. The biggest issues that, you know, I personally had, and I know I've talked to other teachers as well, the first couple of weeks was getting kids adjusted to the technology. I was doing a lot of like IT work with them, like, you know, trying to help them problem solve, navigating through all these different platforms that we're using, and hearing a lot of frustrations from parents, especially regarding like, you know, structure at home and time management and you know, those things that we typically deal with in the classroom, parents now having to assume that role and responsibility. And regarding the statement that Cuomo made, I don't agree with it. I'm just going to be honest. I think that there is a need for traditional classrooms. The interactions that you have in the classroom with students is not the same online. Being able to check work that students are doing, like being able to pop over their shoulder, pull them for like a small conference, you can't do that online. It's not the same. You can see their work online, but it's not the same as like being with them right there in the classroom. So I think that there definitely is a need for traditional schools. I don't see that going away. I think that technology can be integrated in that environment, but I don't see how a school could like especially move online. And speaking as a fourth grade teacher, like, you know, the kids that I'm teaching right now, like they need and they crave social interaction. So many of them are telling me like they want to go back to school, like they miss their friends, and it's just not the same, you know, being online and interacting with their peers or being online and interacting with me as their teacher.
I agree with Chanel in working with students who have severe and moderate disabilities. Out of my classroom of 7 kids, only 3 of them are actually able to do the work that we post online for them. And that is just purely because a lot of their parents are essential workers and they can't access the technology without their parents' help. So I think that it sounds all well and good, but for students who actually need a teacher's assistance or who need a paraprofessional to help them do the work and who need that help, I don't see how students with disabilities, severe and moderate disabilities, are going to be able to be included. And so that's one of the issues that I do have with them saying that it will all move online. And also, like Chanel was saying, a lot of my students have issues with social emotional connections. So just being in the classroom, being with other students, it helps them. And so having that relationship with them, it's completely different online. And even for students who are nonverbal, just being able to be in a classroom with students who are verbal or being surrounded by other students, it helps them as well. So to move online completely, I don't see it.
I agree with Julia. I feel as though within my classroom, what I notice is that the students who are higher performing students are doing fine. They've adjusted, they've figured it out. Most of them, if they don't need their parents' help, they're fine on their own. My students who do have disabilities, however, it just seems as if like the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. So it's as though they have missed like an entire year of learning. Even things that I've taught them already, they can't remember. And I understand like this is what we have to do now, but if this is a forced thing and we have to continue doing this, I really fear for my students who have disabilities because they're just missing out on years of learning. My organization is saying that all students are moving up because it's not fair to hold them back. However, they're about to encounter 5th grade content and they've missed half a year of 4th grade. Some kids will be able to catch it up, and others it's just going to be a really long road.
As a administrator, it has been a gift and a challenge, and I think that how schools experience this current context all comes from the plan from the leadership team. I know my team has worked tirelessly, and I guess I do appreciate the gift. For example, my team from the beginning, we never called it a school closure. We actually called it a school redesign. Like, we're not going to dwell in a negative connotation. where actually this is an opportunity to kind of have us look at our practices in the mirror and say, oh, wow, is there anything about our current practices that we can shift or redesign? And I think starting the beginning off with a different type of mindset about it has pushed us to take a lot of risk and do things that we might have never thought about doing, like giving an online end of year assessment to students virtually. That was something, if you would have asked us in September, we would have never said, oh, wow, give them laptops at home and let them do an assessment. So I appreciate the gift of innovation and recreation of what school can look like. I do agree with my educational colleagues on the call that that is not a permanent solution. We do need to get back into our buildings for that social interaction. However, my team has spent a lot of time of thinking about what would a hybrid look like? Like if we were to get back in the building, could our students have laptops at home and have Chromebooks in school? And what that kind of hybrid balance experience could look like, because I do think that this current context has presented us with some reflection about the future and in terms of technological preparedness of our students. And I think that they will have to be doing some level of their work on computers and in a virtual setting, because I think it will become somewhat of a way of the future. I think the reason why I would say it is a challenge also, I think if you think about the K through 12 experience, those are a lot of students. And I know for my elementary school, I have to think about it in two buckets, like K through 2 does this and grades 3 through 5 do this to make sure that everyone's supported. But I think that it all depends on like our mindset and how we approach the work to think about what solution and what is the best plan. And I know one thing that has been helpful for me and my team is to really put together a lot of resources of what other schools and what other districts and other states are doing in order to make sure that we are coming up with the best plan for our students. Because I think that trickles down to the teacher's experience, to the student's experience, and most importantly, to the family's experience as well.
So I agree with everyone. I know that in high school, you know, some of the problems that our students have is some of them are actually have become essential workers. So they're not even home to do their assignments. You know, it's hard to reach out to them. Our school is one of the schools, you know, traditionally lacks a lot of funding. So we actually didn't have enough technology for all of our students. So access to technology was an issue for a lot of our students as well. So trying to call home and do IEP meetings and do all these other things, and you speak to the student, they say, oh, you know, I've been trying to do work on my phone, but, you know, the Wi-Fi goes out, or there's some assignments I can't do on my phone and we don't have a computer. You know, it's heartbreaking and you want to do more. And sometimes, you know, it's hard. But for the most part, a lot of our students have stepped up to the challenge. As time goes, people are, you know, they're borrowing laptops from other students. You know, things are somewhat getting better. At the size of my high school, I think it's very important that we get back in the building so that we can service most of our students. So I disagree with Governor Cuomo. Traditional school, you know, it has its downfall. Yes, you know, people can nitpick at certain things, but for the most part, the benefits of school outweigh the negatives. So I think that it's very important that we do get back into the school, especially as a school counselor, you know, and you're trying to guide students in the high school level into college. Again, trying to get them to work from home on that when people from home are telling them that college isn't even important, and the only positive positive conversations they have about college is in school. You know, I think it's important that they come back and they're around a little bit more of a loving environment. Some of our students, especially in high school, like I said, they have to look after their little siblings. They have to cook, they have to clean, they have to go to work, they have to do all this other stuff. And school is becoming like the fourth option. So it's extremely difficult. But again, I think that Governor Cuomo I think it was kind of an emotional decision at the time to say that, because he's dealing with a lot. So to him, he's kind of like, why are you asking me about school? You know, so I think that's where he was going with it. But I think deep down, he knows the importance of, you know, traditional schooling.
Thank you for that, Drew. Thank you, everyone. So in the interest of time, and we're going to shift gears a little bit, and I'm going to ask, what advice would we would you guys give to students who are considering entering the education field for all of our viewers that are currently watching?
Advice that I would have is stay persistent. If you're looking at a school counseling position, there are not a lot of school counseling positions. It is extremely hard to get a job. You know, for every building, there might be 1 or 2 counselors for every 25 teachers. So it's extremely hard to get a job in school counseling. What I would say is try nonprofit first. That's what I did. I went the nonprofit route. I got 5 years of experience there, and then I was able to transition into traditional school from there. So it's persistent, find different ways to get your feet wet, provide for your family, but it's you definitely don't want to give up. And like I said, patience is key when you're looking for a job and working with students. You definitely patience is one of the best qualities.
And I would just say spend time with children. Like before I even formally entered any university program, you know, I was a camp counselor. I worked at an after school. I did volunteer hours of service at my church's daycare center. I think that is really important because that will ground you in your why of why you want to enter the field before you make any formal decisions about what school and what program. You really want to be grounded in why, because that's what fuels the fire when you're up late at night writing lesson plans, or when you are nervous about maybe a conversation that you might have to have with a family, or when you have a student who you gave a direction to and you're like, why aren't you listening? I love you so much. Like, it's really that why and your dedication to the students that grounds, you know, when you're writing that paper in grad school to finish your degree. I really would recommend spending time with children, and there's so many opportunities in New York City to do that in a volunteer setting or even in a paid setting. And I think that it will truly have a tremendous impact on like what other formal steps you take after that, like what program or what university.
Before I go, I just want to say that you're going to learn most of what you most of what you're going to know as a teacher in the classroom. You know, in grad school, you know, and you know, school can give you information about how to be a teacher, but you're really going to learn a lot being in the classroom. Most of what I learned wasn't in school, was actually being in the classroom. So what I would say to you is when you have the opportunity to get into classrooms, learn as much as you can, ask the teachers questions, and really get to know what you're about to get into. It's a really, really great profession, and I really hope that you really take everything that you learn inside of school settings into account, and you also pay attention to what you're learning in school, because both are valuable, but being in the school is where you're going to learn the most. So take those opportunities to learn as much as you can. I have to go. I have to get to my class, but I hope everybody has a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
I definitely agree with what everyone is saying. I would say, you know, for me, my background was in health education, and I wasn't sure about making the leap into educational setting, especially working with severe and moderate students with disabilities. But for me, having the experience to be able to shadow a teacher whom I'm able to see them interact with the students and work in the classroom, that's when it really signed the deal for me that, hey, I want to do this. And also, if you do have a passion for it, you know, the kids are gonna see that exuding from you. And also just being able to talk to other people, just like in platforms like this. So, you know, being able to talk to other educators and people who are in teaching settings before you make the decision to pursue education is also great.
Thank you.
My advice would be to network as much as possible. If you hear about networking events, things connected to education, even things that are not connected to education, still attend those. I find that switching networks, like people knew my name before I even knew them, just through networking. I have been the topic of many discussions, and so that was good to have, like, as I stepped into an entire new network and into an entire new position. So make sure you network as much as possible.
Suggest that there's a lot of different opportunities in education, in the school system. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to automatically become a teacher, because there are different processes of going in. Schools or even administrator will not accept you with a bachelor's degree unless you're already pursuing a master's degree through different fellowships, or you already currently have a master's degree in education like I did. I came in with a master's of education in order to participate in the role as a teacher. I have different roles in my position. I am not in the classroom. I am outside of the classroom. I'm in charge of discipline, attendance, and the school operations. So there's many different roles that you can actually pursue as a teacher, and that's the flexibility of it that was mentioned before. You have to be flexible and be able to expand your mind about things that can actually support you as a professional. You can become a parent coordinator at first, or school secretary, or school counselor, and then see if this is the rope for you to become a teacher. There's different paths. We all in this panel have different paths of how we became a teacher, but you also need to see the opportunities of what else is in the school community to be able to move forward. You can even become a teaching assistant first and see if this is really something that you're passionate about by supporting somebody and seeing somebody model it for you, or even get into school culture that I'm currently in. I chose that because I believe in mental health and that is important, and what social emotional learning is needed in these schools in order to have a better outcome of our students' behaviors. So if you have a background, someone mentioned in mental health or in health, it definitely changes how you maneuver inside the school system, and it's needed because you never know if the teacher needs a guideline that you already know how to support them. That's why we have co-teaching teams and curriculum teams, and everything is specified by groups. So in order so you can get that resource and be able to implement it in your classroom. So there's definitely different opportunities in the school that will help you to become the teacher that you want to become.
Just to piggyback off of Dixon, also, if you have your bachelor's degree or you're on your way to get your bachelor's degree, there are schools that will pay for your master's degree. So inquire about those things, because I have many schools that pay for students to get their, for teachers to get their master's degrees in education. So you might not even have to pay for that on your own. So do some of that research.
Thank you for that, guys. So I know that most of our students are adult learners who are going to be pursuing their associate's degree, right? And a lot of times they ask, okay, are there any jobs that I can get after I get my associate's degree? Because like I said, they're older folks who maybe have to provide for their families, but they want to pursue their degrees and their education, but they want to know, well, after I obtain my associates, is there anything that I can do, let's say in an education field, where I can maybe start to work, get my feet wet, be able to provide for my family, but then continue on studying to get my bachelor's or master's or so on?
So one thing that I would like to add to the conversation in relation to that, most of my career, like I said, was in the charter sector. And so charter schools have a little bit more flexibility than traditional public schools in terms of the hiring of their staff and their qualifications. So for example, I have staff members on my staff who do have associate's degree, but do have a role in the school. And so similar to what Dixon said, those roles can vary from school aide. Sometimes in some charter schools, it can be a member of the culture team, which works with the dean or maybe the social worker. So I know that there are so many opportunities within the charter sector for students who are currently in school and may only have an associate's degree and are pursuing a bachelor's degree. And like Khadijah said, some charter networks would even work with the staff members to assist them with attaining their bachelor's degree or master's thereafter. And I know that because we do have more flexibility, like I said, there will probably be a higher likelihood that there are a larger amount of roles versus like a traditional track of the DOE where you might only be able to be a school aide or a teaching assistant. So I would definitely highly recommend it. You could start with the Indeed search of like charter school jobs. All of them will come up, and many of them will show you the qualifications, because we really want to partner. Like Dixon said, people come to education in many different ways. What's most important is that we have people who are passionate and want to work with our children and want to better themselves and become lifelong learners themselves. And so you'll find that there are a lot of opportunities in the charter sector.
Thank you so much, Robin. Are there any final thoughts or takeaways before I open it up for questions to the students?
I think I have to jump off the call to participate in a demo to hopefully hire a teacher. But the last thing that I want to share is that I just want to applaud the students who are on the call today, because this is the first step. Like Khadijah referenced, this is your first step at networking, of putting yourself in the same, virtual room or same space as educators. And I think I commend you for taking that step. And I think that as long as you stay true to your commitment, and making whatever choice it may be within education, I think that you will find that it is a rewarding profession, and one that you will be in for a very long time. And so, like I said, I commend you. I wish you all the best of luck. I'm sure that the partners at LaGuardia can definitely put you in contact with us if you have any further questions. But I really wish you the best of luck, and I really see a really bright future. And I hope that in maybe 2 years or 3 years, I'm jumping off a call just like now and having a demo with one of you. All right. So I wish you all the best, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Robin. So again, I'll open it up to the panelists if anyone has any last takeaways that they want to mention, or also, Professor, if you could maybe speak to what it may be like for a student who is going into education at LaGuardia.
Well, I just wanted to add that choosing a career path in education has to be some sort of, I've always thought that teaching is a vocation, that you have to be responding to a call to teach in a way, because the work in education is with people, and people, again, with intellectual mindset, emotional dispositions, and you being a person yourself, it's just a lot of things to manage. And the desire to want to help other people, guide other people, and at the same time, better yourself. When you are a teacher, you're always learning, you're always growing. You are never coming in as somebody who knows and is going to teach other people who do not know. It's just a constant exchange of ideas. So for me, becoming a teacher is a really humanistic endeavor, and something that is really, really rewarding. In terms of pursuing studies of education in LaGuardia, I have to say that our program is really strong. It offers the alternatives of early childhood education for people who are interested in teaching children birth to 2 years. We have childhood education, which is children in the grades from 1 through 6th grade. Secondary ed, which is 7th to 12th, and then bilingual education. So there are a number of things that you can choose at LaGuardia. When you come into our courses, we basically invite you to do field work. Well, it's a requirement. It's not just an invitation, it's a requirement. But I see it as an invitation because right from the get-go, you get to realize if this is for you.
Right.
Some of us might be responding to, well, I come from a family of educators, so everybody's expecting me to be an educator. And you realize that this is not really for you. And you realize this before you've invested too much time and energy in your studies. So this is a really good thing that we offer. And then, of course, as part of taking part of this research experience, you would have to begin some processes with the Department of Education, New York City, so that you can get access to public schools. We send students to public schools. As was mentioned before, there are a number of ways that you can be involved in education through the charters, private sector, or the public sector. We work with the public schools. And for us at LaGuardia, is something very meaningful, because at LaGuardia, we have a myriad of people coming from so many different backgrounds. And when we come into the public schools, we see that there are students, again, from all sorts of backgrounds. And we realize that we matter. Students are, that mirroring between students and teachers is really necessary. Students need to see that they are minority teachers, of color, women, men, that they can see reflected in the teachers. Students need that. We need that variety. And I'm really proud that at least I know that our student body in LaGuardia, we offer that to the public school system.
I actually want to take a few minutes also to explain what exactly a school counselor does, right? So as a guidance counselor, oh, you'll hear me switch back and forth between school and guidance counselor because school counselor is our official title, but guidance counselor is the more popular term, right? So as a school counselor, our main job is to keep track of students and make sure that they're on the right path for graduation, right? So we have to um, know how many credits each student has, know how many credits each student needs, which specific classes they need. Um, are they meeting all the requirements as far as Regents testing goes, and so on and so forth? You know, SATs and everything else, right? So that's our main job. On top of that, we also have to help, obviously, help kids get into college, help them figure out what they want to do as a next step in life, because not everyone's going to go to college. Are they going to go to trade school? Are they going to go to the military? Um, are they going to take a gap year? There's all these other options that we have to help students figure out, right? And so, on top of that, we also have to do special education meetings. We have to do parent meetings. We have to do administrative meetings. Sometimes we actually have to go into classrooms and teach a curriculum. We could be teaching about college. We could be teaching about careers, learning styles, um, social emotional health. Anything to make our students more well-rounded students, right? So our job is we're kind of a hybrid of the whole school, depending on your school culture and your school administration. They might have you do different roles, but for the most part, those are going to be your main roles. So we take a little bit from what a social worker does as far as like counseling students and helping them out with their families. We take a little bit from teachers where we have to do curriculum teaching, and we have to follow certain standards that are set by the school. Um, and we take a little bit from administrators because, like I said, we have to hold parent meetings. Sometimes we have to run special education meetings, and like I said, but for the most part, our main goal is to make sure that students are getting what they need in order to succeed in high school and after high school.
Someone requesting to speak to a social worker.
Mhm.
School counselors and social workers do share similar practices. However, it depends on the intensity of the practice. Social workers do provide more one-on-one therapy with the child. And the misconception is that they feel like school counselors cannot provide that. They actually can, but there's only certain severities that they cannot control and need assistance from a social worker to be able to provide the appropriate therapy. So one thing is the misconception as well is that why is it that school social workers are not being hired in the school system? And it's also because of budget purposes. It is much easier to hire a school counselor than a school social worker because of the licensing piece of a social worker. There are different roles in the school building for a social worker that does not have to involve one-on-one therapy with the child. There's a section in our school called the school-based support team, where they support with the IEPs, which is the individualized education programs, with special education students that are the buffer between the family and their IEP meetings. So that's overall that school social workers are usually hired for. The situation with that is that we have a hiring freeze for school social workers. We have a lot of school social workers that are reached the age gap of 20 years or more and will not retire because the system is well benefited, and they will not leave the system. They will stay there until 65, 70, 80 years old. I'm being realistic because I was in the passion of becoming a school social worker. And once I heard those guidelines, I stepped out a little bit because I wanted to find a way how to be able to be part of the school system. Like Drew mentioned, there's different avenues. I decided to become a teacher and hire as an attendance teacher to provide the discipline, well, not discipline, to change the vocabulary, the school culture, and be able to provide a better way to intensify attendance, family engagement, and student engagement. So there are different avenues, but you still can become a school social worker through nonprofits inside the schools, because schools are always looking for enrichment programs, are also looking for nonprofits to support with other counseling methods that they cannot provide, and also research the school and their environment and their setting. The reason why I'm saying that is because depending on the borough that you decide to work with, to the research. They are hiring more in the South Bronx area where it's underprivileged, mental health cases are higher, and most importantly, the education gap is low. And that's where they need more of us as teachers to enroll in these small communities, these poor communities that are not needed, are not getting the right education, and we need strong teachers to motivate our families. They are coming from hardship, and we need to forget about the hardship and focus on what's the need and how we move them forward. So there's a lot of dynamics that we also have to focus on what schools can provide for our children. So do your research your school, research the borough that you're gonna be working in, and also research the fellowship programs that you decide to join in order to become a teacher, to see if it's going to benefit you in the long run.
Yeah, I would just say I completely agree with what he's saying. My program, as an alternate certification program, I came in with my bachelor's in health education, and the program itself subsidizes my master's degree. And so in order for me to continue my education, I commit myself to teach 2 years in a higher needs area. And one of the areas is in the South Bronx. And especially for anyone who's interested in teaching District 75, which is students with severe and moderate disabilities, they are looking for teachers. They really have opened the door for anyone who's interested in working with students with severe disabilities. So if you have just an inkling or an interest, I would say there's the New York City Teaching Fellows, which is what I'm a part of. There's the collaborative. There are a couple of other programs that have, and not just in New York, in other states around the country that are looking for teachers to come teach these students who are in high needs areas and who do have severe and multiple disabilities. So there's plenty of pathways, and they definitely, another concern with me was going to school and acquiring more student debt and just finding a program that was free for me to attend. And just promising 2 years to me is nothing, because it's going to go and come so quickly. But there are definitely ways where finances shouldn't be an option. If you want to pursue a master's in education, there are alternative pathways.
Thank you for sharing that information. I will say for any of the students that would like to receive this video and all the information about programs like New York City Teaching Fellows and the Collaborative, and information about LaGuardia and its majors, please, in the chat, you can send me your email addresses, and I will make sure to get you this information at the end of it all. So Professor mentioned all of the majors that are available at LaGuardia. So I just kind of want to show you guys a degree map that you will be receiving, which looks like this, and it kind of breaks down each of the majors that we have at LaGuardia: the childhood education, secondary education, the bilingual child, early childhood education, and a description for each one of them, and some of the degrees or requirements that you would need in order to pursue that degree, and also some labor market information regarding what kind of professions you can obtain with an associate's degree or with a bachelor's degree, how much you could potentially be earning. And then of course, what's really important is the job growth, right? So once you obtain your associate's degree or your bachelor's or your master's, will there still be a demand for teachers? And as you can see here, yes, there's always gonna be a demand for educators. So this degree map information is for every single one of you. So if anyone is interested in receiving this degree map, please contact us. Here's our email: careerdevelopmentcenter@lagcc.cuny.edu. This information is here at your disposal. So now I just want to take the time to just thank each and every one of our panelists. You guys were awesome. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to provide our students with this information, all of this knowledge, all of these gems that you guys dropped today. This was our first ever virtual career panel, the first of many. So again, thank you so much. And to our viewers, thank you for tuning in, and have a great day.